This is a brief tutorial about the insert key. I really mean the key on your keyboard. And in order to show you why that is of some kind of importance, let's create a cylinder. And the cylinder wants scaling. So I press the key R, which allows me to scale it. In all dimensions, in this dimension, or the blue one, which is the x-axis in this case, and let's concentrate on that, in the y-axis, like this. What the cylinder does is it scales from the center point, this point here, up and down. So it gets longer to the top and to the bottom. This, in many cases, is not really ideal. That's why I want to show you how to fix this in order to get a totally different kind of scaling here. Let's move the cylinder up to the grid, like this. If you go to the side view, you see how precisely you moved it up, like this. You could snap it, as it's called, as well, but let's not do this now. And now comes the insert key. Press the insert key on your keyboard and watch what's happening to this arrangement of user interface icons. It slightly changes, not very much though. It has that yellowish thing plus a rotation axis, and what we will do now, without further questioning, let's go again to the side view and move this thing down. Just like here. Doesn't have to be precise for this experiment here. It's called the pivot. It's the focal point. It's the, so to say, the gravitational center of this object. Now let's press insert again, and we're back to the normal tool. And the difference now is that the user interface tool, the scaling and translation tool, is set to the bottom of this object. Which means if we press R now for scaling, we scale the whole thing up from the bottom and only up and not down anymore. So let's move this to the side for now and create a, say, torus. The torus is here, and the torus has its focal point, the center of gravity, so to say, in the middle. We can move it anywhere, the pivot it is called. So let's press insert and move the pivot here, for example. Yeah, and press insert again. Of course, this has no real new effect now. We're translating the torus. But if we go to scaling, for example, the scaling, we scale it from that point to the left, and only to the left, because we put the pivot to the right. And the same applies pressing the key E for rotation. We rotate it here, and not from the center. If we want to rotate in a clockwork, for example, the object from a totally different angle, let's press insert again, move this thing to the side and up maybe, press insert again. So the pivot now of this torus sits here. So if we rotate it now, it rotates around here. This would be nice to make a clockwork, for example. And finally, let's make a new scene and create 3 objects. As you can see now, the pivot is in the center. That's the default how the objects land in the scene. So we have 3 objects now. Let's select all of them. You can select them here in the outliner or just select them in the perspective window. And we want to group them together in order to make them move or scale together. We do this by pressing Control and G for group. And now we see here a group in the outliner, and our three objects are in the hierarchy below that group node. And the group node has a pivot too. Here is the pivot of the group node. So if we, for example, rotate the group, it will rotate like this and like this. But if we want the whole group to rotate around the cone, for example, we press Insert, and now we can use snapping if you like. Press the, move the pivot a little bit towards that direction, and then press the key V. V is for snapping. It snaps to that point now, to the bottom, I guess, or to the side, whatever. It snaps to that object here and to certain elements of that object. You have to go closer in order to do the snapping more precisely, but that's good for now. So we've moved the pivot from the center of the scene, so or the sort of the center of the whole three objects, to the cone. Now we press Insert again, and now if we rotate the whole arrangement, it rotates around that cone.